summer, we decided to try dumpster diving, thinking it would be an interesting look into an aspect of food we often don't think about, food waste. Our first outing, we found some slightly overripe bananas at Trader Joe's and made some awesome banana bread the next day. However, when we went out a few more times, we never found anything else. Some dumpsters were locked, most were simply empty. Intrigued by the difficulty in achieving dumpster diving success, we decided to look into where the food waste was going. So much salvageable food goes to waste, right?
It turns out much of this food was actually being salvaged instead of sent to landfills. Organizations around the Louisville area, including Kentucky Harvest and Dare to Care, save food that would otherwise go to waste and collaborate with community organizations to help distribute it to people in need. When the food is distributed at schools, churches, and other sites, it further helps foster community interaction. This includes both produce and packaged products. Glean Kentucky also salvages food from stores such as Kroger and Whole Foods, and they collect leftovers from farmers markets. They also save the seconds, which is the produce left over after the harvest. These organizations rely on volunteers and sometimes have trouble finding enough. But overall, the groups are thriving thanks to dedicated leadership and fundraising. We spoke to managers at Rainbow Blossom, Value Market, and Trader Joe's. They all cared about food waste, taking action by giving food to the previously mentioned organizations. Additionally, at Rainbow Blossom, employees are allowed to take home extra produce, and at Value Market, some food is donated to local farms for fertilizer. These ideas could easily be emulated in other areas. It's a win-win since food waste is reduced and people in hunger receive a healthier, wider variety of food than they would otherwise.
The efforts to minimize food waste in Louisville have motivated us to view individual food waste more critically. According to an EPA study, approximately 25% of foods and drinks purchased in the United States end up being thrown out. Like many efforts, we believe that minimizing food waste applies to everyone. Various actions include supporting grocers who donate food waste or volunteering at one of the many organizations with the mission to reallocate excess food. Importantly, one should shop with intention and thus minimize food waste before it becomes waste.
This summer, I have the opportunity to work with New Roots, Inc., a nonprofit that ignites communities to come together, share knowledge, and build relationships with farmers to secure access to fresh food. Fresh stops are the fruit of New Roots' labor. Sometimes referred to as vegetable and fruit flash mobs, fresh stops pop up bi-weekly in churches and schools where communities pool their resources and purchase produce from local farmers upfront, thus obtaining wholesale prices to the group. At New Roots, we understand that the food we eat impacts every area of our life, from personal health to the sustainability of the local economy. Currently, Louisville has 5 fresh stops, with plans to launch 2 more by the end of the year and far more on the waiting list. Meeting the demand for more fresh stops has become our group's greatest concern and organizational challenge. At present, we train each fresh stop individually, a process that demands the full time and resources of our 2 paid staff members and volunteer leaders. The model has proven to be extremely effective for reaching families living in Louisville's most food-insecure neighborhoods. However, our custom of starting one neighborhood fresh stop at a time does not allow for impact maximization. Thus, for the sustainability of our organization and the urgent need to empower those who want to claim their human right to healthy food, we propose the Fresh Stop Training Institute, accordingly pronounced FEISTY. FEISTY will utilize a leader training leaders model to share best practices with multiple neighborhoods at once and elevate the collective power of the network. Being historically minded, I was quick to summon a connection between FEISTY and the Mississippi Summer Project of 1964, otherwise known as Freedom Summer, which is currently celebrating its 50th anniversary. Freedom Summer, a large-scale campaign to register Black voters, was not a movement to teach people what to think, but rather a concerted effort to enable disenfranchised people how to empower themselves with tools that, if audaciously engaged, allowed for participation in choosing who and what to support. Likewise, at New Roots, we employ a democratic community organizing model to empower community leaders with the knowledge and tools to sustain a fresh stop. I once had a high school teacher say that we vote with our dollars. She meant the phrase metaphorically, but considering the current environment of campaign finance, it proves an unvarnished truth. Thus, conscious consumption is more important than ever, but in the food deserts of inner-city Louisville, liquor stores and fast food chains are abundant, but grocery stores scarce and filled with less variety and poorer quality fruits and vegetables. Due to transportation costs, high retail prices, and the accessibility of high-calorie, cheap and processed foods, many in inner-city Louisville have no choice but to vote for processed and fast foods, sometimes once every day, if not more. As we look toward expanding our scale and impact through Feisty, the profound similarities between Freedom Summer and our own work merit meditation. For one, Freedom Summer was not merely a campaign to register Black voters. It also included the establishment of Freedom Schools, in which volunteers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, taught Black youth Black history and leadership development. So too must we at New Roots consciously include the food history of Black Louisville to remember a time when 15, not 5, grocery stores populated the area, and Old Walnut Street, now Muhammad Ali Boulevard, was lined with popular restaurants that served as community spaces for slow cooking and shows by artists such as Duke Ellington. To provide the youth in inner-city Louisville with a vision for a rich and diverse food culture, we must not forget history. Additionally, just as Freedom Summer was in large part led by SNCC volunteers, we must too encourage young people to assume leadership positions through Feisty, if not for our own immediate efforts, then for the empowerment of future leaders. It was the young participants of Freedom Summer who continued on to lead the great movements, environmental and women's rights, of the last few decades. And finally, the efforts of the Freedom Summer Project amassed a large volunteer base which contributed to public awareness about racial injustice and knew they were there not to lead. They understood local knowledge is more powerful than their own, that for a sustainable movement long after volunteers, Black and white, left Mississippi, and true structural change, volunteers needed to aid local leaders in whatever capacity necessary. Thus, we at New Roots must, through Feisty, assemble a strong foundation of diverse volunteers able to raise awareness about food justice and work in solidarity with local leaders. Thank you to the brave participants of Freedom Summer. Now, we must activate these lessons with a new generation and commit to the accessibility of affordable and fresh food for all.
All right, so I'm here with Ren at Bernheim Arboretum. And so the first question, Ren, is what do you do for Bernheim? What is your role at Bernheim?
I think I have the best job here. I get to train our volunteer naturalist. My title is Interpretive Programs Manager, so that means I think it means that I get to do all kinds of fun things.
Great.
But my main job is training our volunteer naturalist. So it's
Cool.
a program I started, and I get to hang out with these people who are here because they want to be here, and they're excited about sharing what they learn about nature with others. So that's a big part of what I do. But I also get to do programs such as foraging programs and working with the tour groups that come in, and sometimes helping with school groups. So I get to do a little bit of all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. So I'm sort of, as you know, I'm doing this sort of have a foraging focus, and so I'm kind of interested in knowing when you first realized that the weeds that you overlooked were actually edible and that you could eat them, some of them.
I got a lot of this early interest from my mom and dad.
Okay.
When we went camping and so forth, and we also did harvesting of black walnuts every fall and persimmons.
Yeah.
And some foods that other people just kind of didn't bother to collect, we did. Even hickory nuts, which are just kind of tedious to prepare. But we always did trips to get blackberries and persimmons and walnuts, things like that. And then, so I just thought that was so fun, that you could go out and, wild places and roadsides and pick things up, and next thing you know, you're turning them into the most delicious cookies you ever tasted in your life. But it was just really kind of planted in my head from an early age. And that was my dad's fishing buddy.
Oh, yeah?
So the idea of catching food, eating it, my parents both gardened, so I liked the idea of being directly involved with my food sources, a couple times a year.
And so you're not originally from Louisville, though, right?
I'm from Shelby County.
Shelby County.
Yes.
So do you think that it was easier to forage in Shelby County than in Louisville?
I think now that I know a little bit more about wild foods than I did in my teenage years. I mean, you see wild foods everywhere, especially weeds. You know, people don't sometimes realize just how abundant edible weeds are. I mean, you know, look around right now, we can see things that you could eat. They're not the most tasty things from this point of view, but I think the city has a lot more edibles than people realize. Usually things that are pretty common.
So what advice would you give to someone who's foraging, who's basically an amateur forager like myself?
I'd say that the first advice is to be absolutely certain of anything that you eat. Not only its identity, but how it should be prepared.
The question, what do you think the value of foraging is to people who have the income to be able to go to the grocery store to get all their food and have the accessibility?
I think the number one thing is the contact with nature. You know, of course, nature is surrounding us anyway, but it's more of a deliberate slowing down. As I mentioned to you earlier, for me, plants are a bridge to the rest of nature.
Yeah.
And so when you're slowing down to make positive identification of something, that's when you see the strangest caterpillar you've ever seen in your life, or the bird nest in the thicket. So for me, the biggest value is that deeper connection, that deeper awareness of your connection with nature, because you're in tune a little bit more. And you start noticing things on the roadside in bloom, and I better go get those black locust blossoms now because they won't be good in another week, you know, that kind of thing. And you start seeing the bees and so forth that are pollinated, and you realize, you know, they're as interested as you are in those things.
If you've ever talked with me about anything, we probably talked about food. It's no secret that I love good food, love cooking food, and would do just about anything for some smoked brisket.
Judge it from the color of its breast and the sound of its song. But I'm just thinking of you, 'cause you're in sunny California.
What intrigues me so much about food not only revolves around its infinite forms and flavors, but how most human interaction orbits around food. So barbecue interests me in particular because I believe it tastes best in the company of people you love, people you like, or people who at least share an appreciation of well-cooked food.
Significantly better.
And so the epic began with a tip from the fabulous Ann Curtis, who told me that Wes Barry, Kentucky barbecue guru, was the man to contact. So I did, but to no avail. However, I purchased his book from a nice lady who was very amused at the prospect of a college co-ed in a pink tennis skirt purchasing an account of a barbecue walkabout. I have definitely enjoyed sharing his enthusiasm for barbecue. However, I find that his accounts lack what I enjoy most about barbecue, which is a social aspect. So I refocused my project a bit to creating opportunities to share good food with good people.
And I don't care if it takes years or more, but as I walk,
with some tips from my new book and some local barbecue fanatics, I began in Owensboro, Kentucky, which is one of the capitals for American barbecue. We started with Moonlight Barbecue, which, despite the fervor surrounding it, I am not a Moonlight fan. But Jessica went with me, and we also hit up Old Hickory Pit, which was far more exciting to us. And I dragged some FoodWorks fellows to the Flea Off to have barbecue at the 502 Cafe food truck, and that was great. and dragged my parents to barbecue around Louisville. My mom and I went to Hammerheads in the Smoketown neighborhood and shared ribs and a brisket sandwich, both of which were like butter. And my dad and I found some barbecue on the Harvest menu in Nulu, and that was really, really good. So overall, I'm loving what Kentuckians are doing with barbecue, as well as enjoying sharing it with new people and old people. What's also interesting about barbecue is its long history in the South and the southern Midwest of the United States. Michael Pollan mentions in his book Omnivore's Dilemma that we are so confused as a culture when it comes to food because of our short food history. But barbecue has been there since the beginning. The Native Americans were slow roasting things, and the Spanish had pigs, and they got together in the South and there was barbecue. It's cool to see how different parts of the United States, although they all participate in the barbecue culture, they each have their own way of cooking meat or a different focus of meat because of their own history. So, what better way to go about a history lesson than to eat it?
Wasn't much for religion, but he learned to pray. For occasions when the wine led his mind astray, he built a chapel for his conscience, a shack for his regrets, set his eye to an island, still he could not forget the sound.
So a big part of the FoodWorks program this summer has been congregating at the Bardstown Road Farmers Market every Saturday morning to eat omelets, to buy veggies for the week, and to socialize with everybody else who's there. Though this may seem like a pretty basic and mundane thing, I quickly realized after going there every week that the omelets were not just a free meal that was offered to us. There's a lot more meaning behind them. So for my food challenge, I want to study the story behind these omelets. I came up with 2 questions to guide my investigation. The first one, how do these omelets came to be? What's their background story? And the second is, what do these omelets mean to both the eaters of the omelets and the makers of the omelets? So to answer the first part of my question, I decided to bring a friend along and we went to look at how the omelets were made. That happens every Thursday night at the kitchen of a local restaurant, Harvest, and they take all these ingredients from the farm and chop them, roast them, prep them for the omelets. So we came one Thursday and we helped out. So we ended up chopping a lot of fennel, mixing and roasting a bunch of beets, labeling lots of cans. Everything was very organized, and also chopping a lot of squash. It was pretty tedious, to be honest. It took us probably 4 hours, but in the end it was really rewarding. So the next step is the actual cooking of the omelets on Saturday morning, which is really awesome because you get to stand there and watch while it all happens. So after investigating the first part of my question, I moved on to the second part, which was, what do omelets mean to you? And to start that, I asked Rowan Claypool, who is the founder of this omelet tradition, and saw what he had to say.
We have all our interns come so that, one, they get a really great meal every week, but mostly so they experience the community that goes on here. So this is a way, it's multi-generational. It brings people from all across the region who are bringing their food here into the city to be together. But most of all, I think it's a way for our interns to be enmeshed in what is the Louisville local food economy.
After talking to Rowan, I went and talked to Brent Peters, who was on the other side of the table. He's the one making the omelets.
Okay. For one, just being at the farmers market is a joy. I look forward to it every weekend. Being able to see folks and talk to folks at the farmers market and meet new people. It's bringing people together, bringing communities together, and economies together too, I think. I must say that on a personal note, I met my wife at the farmers market, and I started a conversation with her through a couple that used to come to the market. They would be there every Saturday, the Rileys. The market is a place for that to be encouraged, for compassion to be encouraged, to say, listen, okay, well, how are your kids doing? And how was that trip to New England that you took? And did you have any luck when you went fishing this weekend? Or, are you looking forward to school this semester? And, how was your first semester away? How's cross-country practice going? How was the meet today? Did you score any goals in the soccer match? All these things, and these are what lead to the real valuable things in life.
So as you can see, omelets are not just a free meal of veggies and eggs. Omelets are about building the community, a community of people that show up every Saturday. Omelets are about compassion to total strangers and having really interesting conversations. And sometimes omelets are even about love. So next Saturday is going to be our last chance to have omelets at the farmers market, and I hope to see you there.
As an intern on campus this summer, I decided that I wanted to learn a little bit more about farmers markets because as soon as I got here, they seemed to be one of the most prevalent things going on in the city. And so as I started looking into them, I was talking to people and trying to go to as many farmers markets as I could, and I came to the conclusion that farmers markets build healthy lifestyles in every sense of the word. And I came up with 5 reasons why that is, and I'm going to go through those reasons in this video so that hopefully other people can see that in farmers markets too and choose to attend them and to meet some of the coolest people that you'll ever meet. So, reason number 1 is that farmers markets build incredible communities. And that's not only community between the farmer and the community member, it's also introducing neighbors, introducing people who live a few blocks away from each other and never knew each other, but the farmers market gives them an excuse to meet each other or just to hang out. So a great example of this is the program which I'm currently participating in meets every Saturday at the farmers market, and it's just one of my favorite memories from this summer. People essentially get their produce, they get omelets, they get whatever they want, and then we all kind of sit down and eat together. And it's just a great environment to talk, to catch up, to meet new people. And I've really appreciated that, especially as a newcomer in this city. But another example of this is also I was filming at the farmers market for one of my internships, and I ran into a woman who runs a local radio show about food. And we started talking, and it turns out that she wanted me to come onto the radio show and do an interview with Justin Mogg at U of L. So that's just another way that farmers markets really help to build community. And then beyond that, something that's psychologically proven is that talking with other people, interacting with other people, makes humans happier. And that's only to a certain extent, of course, but farmers markets are a great place to do that. You can't buy your food without interacting with the farmer who grew it. So to me, that's one of the biggest reasons that farmers markets encourage a healthy lifestyle. But also connecting to that community aspect is my second reason, which is that farmers markets bring together people of all different socioeconomic classes. And not all farmers markets in Louisville offer this, but many of the farmers markets accept food stamps or EBT cards and senior vouchers, which allows people who are on food stamps or who are past a certain age and under a certain salary to buy fresh produce with the money provided to them from the government. And that means that there are people attending these farmers markets from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and you would never know at the time. So it's a great way for people to interact who wouldn't necessarily be interacting with each other. So that brings me to my third reason, which is still connecting back to stronger communities, more on the business side of community, but I believe that farmers markets are a great place for casual networking. So one good example of this casual networking is the example that I mentioned before about the host of the local food radio show who I met at the farmers market. But I also have another good example, which is that one of my supervisors, Brian Barnes, who works with the composting initiative at the Belknap campus, and another one of my supervisors, Melissa Schreck, who works at the School of Public Health and Information Sciences, met each other through a farmers market. So these examples make it pretty clear that farmers markets aren't just good for social communication, but also for business communication. And farmers markets themselves can also work together. The Gray Street Farmers Market downtown started around 5 years ago, and now the Belknap Market, which is on the undergraduate campus, just opened this year with a lot of help from the Gray Street Market, and they're helping each other learn. So that's another way that farmers markets help to build community. And then, of course, separate from community, one of the great things about the food that you're going to get at farmers markets is that it's more nutritious and it's tastier. Because when you're buying from a farmer who doesn't use pesticides, who doesn't use artificial fertilizer, you're getting a much higher quality food that's in season, that hasn't necessarily been bred to look like a huge red apple like you might find at the grocery store, but is one of the tastiest things that you'll ever find. So that's a lot better for your body, and it's a lot tastier. So that's a healthy lifestyle in terms of nutrition rather than social interactions. So my last reason is that buying from farmers markets supports the local food economy. When you buy that zucchini from the farmer at the market, you know that your money is going to support that farmer. When you buy something from the grocery store, you don't know exactly where that money is going. It's going back to the corporation where that food came from, and that's very widespread. It could be supporting things that you don't necessarily agree with. So by supporting the local food economy, you are supporting your own community, strengthening Louisville essentially. And also, by getting to know the farmer, you can possibly go out and help and see how the process is completed, from planting to harvesting to bringing it to the market. I know I was more interested in this and talked to Janine Wishy, who works at Swallow Rail Farm in Simpsonville, and I went out to her farm with a couple of the other interns in my program, and we spent the whole day helping out. She took us on a tour of her farm. We did some cleaning. We picked blueberries. We did a lot of really fun things, and it was a great way for me to understand more about our food and where it comes from, about the local food economy, and to get to know a farmer, because we all have to eat food and someone has to grow it. So it makes the most sense to me that we should know about where our food comes from and how it gets to us. So those are the 5 reasons that I found that farmers markets support an all-around healthy lifestyle, in all senses of the word healthy, as I think you would probably gather from this video. So if you haven't checked out the farmers markets in Louisville, there are so many of them. You can find a link to all the farmers markets on our website, and I would really encourage you to go and just chat with a farmer, just buy some eggs. You'll really enjoy the experience.